Hello everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first on the hazardous weather graphic, we've got winter weather advisories for snow continuing until midnight tonight, actually, and could pick up anywhere from an additional 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, at most 5 inches in these areas, including the Galena zone as well as over toward Dehne and up in toward the AKwx Valley with a trough, more or less slow-moving trough in this area, but again, conditions will improve dramatically after midnight. And for the Alaska breakup map, not much change from yesterday. Still some areas of breakup going on here in the non-white areas along the rivers there, up here along the Dehne River, and as well as the Snider River and the Copper River as well. Otherwise, up to the north, still pretty well solid. And actually some breakup out here to the west, like as I mentioned yesterday, Kuskokwim River breaking up from the mouth, kind of coming upstream. A little unusual. Usually goes the other way, obviously, except for this season. And moving on to fire danger. Still possibly, if you use your imagination, maybe some high fire danger areas here, mostly light fuels like grass, possibly here in the, looks like the northern slopes of the east central Alaska range, possibly in the Copper River Basin there. And other than that, not too bad fire danger wise. And then moving on to satellite imagery, we've got a system here cutting across the Queen Charlotte Islands today, and that's taken most of the shower and rainfall with it, is either south of the Panhandle or east, with very little today in the last 12 hours. I think only Shelter Cove recorded 1/100th of an inch. So basically just clouds associated with that from, again, heaviest down over Dixon Entrance. But that system pulling off, so we see a little bit of improvement this evening, but still probably looking at a partly to mostly cloudy, or at least mostly cloudy, if not just overcast condition through tonight for the Panhandle. A little bit better up here along the North Gulf Coast. A few more breaks showing up over the Copper River Basin, eastern interior. And as a result, temperatures were a little warmer there. This area of cloudiness here associated with the snow showers and the areas of snow that is keeping the west central interior there under the winter weather advisory levels there. Kind of an upper level system circulating right through here. If I roll that again, you can just barely make out the counterclockwise circulation of the cloud mass. Otherwise, not much going on up to the north. Still winds gusting 25 to 35 miles an hour eastern Arctic coast there. And one location even had peak gust of 50 miles an hour. So still pretty breezy there on the east side, not so much wind on the west side. And kind of a chilly air mass, but really not a lot of moisture out here over the Bering Sea. Kind of a weak north to northeast wind flow here at the surface. We have this trough here, or actually the line signifying mostly the upper level trough. Here keeping the rain and snow showers. And again, kind of a mix. Temperatures rising in the mid to upper 30s in some areas there. So it's kind of a mixed condition, but definitely going back to all snow tonight as the sun sets and air mass cools. Otherwise, just flurries up in the Arctic coast, isolated showers here in the Bering Strait. A few stray showers there, look like mostly north of the Pribilofs in the form of rain or snow. And with this system, again, not strong, about 991 millibars. Periods of light rain, fog, drizzle occurring over the central Aleutians in toward the Fox Islands with scattered showers back out to the west, but sunshine breaking out Bristol Bay today, Kodiak, very nice conditions up into the northeast, and just some variable clouds, Cook Inlet, Manaska Valley, dry conditions today, and sunshine, eastern Tanana Valley, 40-mile country down in the Copper River Basin, and then just generally cloudy skies over the Panhandle, maybe a few sunbreaks this afternoon up here to the north possibly. More likely though along the North Gulf Coast. And for tonight, we'll see this trough slowly edging eastward, actually kind of pressing up the southern area here quite weak, but could kick off a few snow showers as it reaches the Alaska range. Otherwise, partly mostly cloudy or partly to mostly clear depending on where you are here for south central Alaska in the southeast interior. And panhandle mostly cloudy. You could see some areas of fog developing over the inside waters due to a light wind pattern going on there. And also light winds over much of the interior as well, and those winds diminishing on the eastern Arctic coast, maybe a few flurries, patchy fog. That's about it. Dry for the north slope, and another trough here could keep a chance of snow showers in the forecast, actually from the Bering Strait and the northwest coast here, maybe over to Point Lay, and that's about it. And those amounts, whatever does fall, are going to be quite light. The heavier snowfall will be in this zone, again, where you have the winter weather advisories, and several more inches could fall by midnight tonight. Otherwise, basically dry over the Bering Sea, areas of fog. And then this system stationary near the central Aleutians, periods of rain, fog, and drizzle, low flying conditions, IFR there for those areas, and just isolated showers over toward Nikolsky. Moving on to the forecast Sunday. Areas of snow, lighter winds, as I mentioned, on the east side of the Arctic coast, but still some possible areas of snow or snow showers there along the coastline. And this trough kind of weakening, but re-enhancing this more of a kind of a showery pattern in the afternoon. A little bit of afternoon heating now, triggering some showers, and that'll basically lead to a mostly cloudy condition. But south of the Alaska Range, look for a little more clearing and a lot less showers with partly mostly sunny afternoon, Copper River Basin, maybe in the south central Alaska. Not too bad down toward Kodiak, maybe a few clouds, but basically the wind flow is still light north-northwest. And this moisture will stay off to your east. So southeast Bering here looking really good. May not be completely clear as I've got shown here, but there could be some low clouds or fog there. Definitely the conditions will be dry, and the precipitation staying south and southwest of the permafrost, so that persistent low out there. And the frontal system, winds quite light, not a real intense feature by any means there, and just periods of light rain, fog, low flying conditions. Again, IFR to marginal VFR will extend right up to the Alaska Peninsula, and then back out to the west. A little bit tighter gradient out here, so you could see some north to northwest winds maybe kicking up to 35 miles an hour. That's it, maybe possibly 40 miles an hour, but likely under gale force. And for the southeast coast, maybe some showery conditions there, some moisture streaming up from the southwest, but again, nothing too heavy. This batch staying off the coast of the North Gulf Coast. And then moving on to Monday, got another surge of moisture comes into the Prince of Wales Island area mostly, and in toward Dixon Entrance in the afternoons. Look for an increasing chance of rain in the afternoon there. Actually, probably be pretty likely down toward Heidelberg, possibly over toward Annette, but areas to the north looking pretty good, partly to mostly sunny there. Juneau on over to Haines and Elfin Cove, Yakutat looking good. Dry conditions, sunshine possible, or probable here over southern Alaska, south central Alaska. Isolated rain and snow showers up along the eastern Alaska Range. Otherwise, eastern Tanana Valley, upper Tanana Valley, 40 Mile Country in toward Tanana, pretty dry. And also Kuskokwim Valley looking dry as well up into the upper Yukon, and a trough up here over the northwest will keep a small area of probably some persistent light snow over the western Brooks Range into the Long Mountains. Otherwise, just flurries or snow showers here in that continued cool northerly flow there coming across the Chukchi Sea through the Bering Strait, but probably remain dry for St. Lawrence Island with winds no more than 25, maybe 30 miles an hour. And this front low center out here to the west tightens the gradient up over the western central Aleutians, so look for an increase in the winds out there, possibly as high as 50 miles an hour, which might imply gale warnings, possibly. Much lighter winds here for the Alaska Peninsula, but rain, drizzle, and fog extending from Amchitka all the way over to the Alaska Peninsula. And moving on to the lows for tonight, it looks like just the plus side of 0 there, 0 to 5 for the Arctic coast. Teens, Brooks Range, south of the mountains into the 20s. And 20s all the way down until you hit 30s in the Bristol Bay area, mid-30s for the Pribilofs and Aleutians, and in the 30s for the Panhandle, 25 to 35, south central Alaska, chillier over the Copper River Basin. Highs for Sunday afternoon, 48 to 52, or maybe a little milder up the Susitna Valley, could see 54 or 5 there around Talkeetna, Trapper Creek. Upper 40s, lower 50s, eastern Tanana Valley, lower to mid-teens on the Arctic coast. And the Panhandle, 45 to 50, and the Aleutians lower 40s, upper 30s farther to the west. And for the Monday morning lows, single numbers, 5 to 10, again for the Arctic coast, teens for the Brooks Range, 20s in the interior, 20s lower 30s, south central Alaska, near 30 for the Pribilofs, 30s for the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians, southeast coast, same, 35 to 40 for your lows, and the highs, not much higher, 45 to 50 there, and 45 to 55 south central Alaska, 50 to 55 Tanana Valley, staying cool as usual there up along the Arctic coast in the mid-teens, and 40s now all the way down to near 50 there in Bristol Bay, while Alaska Peninsula not too bad, pretty seasonal, mid-40s for your highs, mid-30s for the Pribilofs. Seems cool, but actually month of April is a cooler month than December is out there. Just a little trivia. Otherwise, remainder of the Aleutians looking for highs near 40.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Tomorrow morning, IFR central Aleutians on out to the west. Marginal here through the Bering Sea, Pribilofs to the Fox Islands and back into the IFR here. Nunivak Island, Yukon Delta coast, right up through the strait there, and then along the north side of the Seward Peninsula. IFR, much of the Arctic coast, to a lesser extent here over the Brooks Range, some of that on down into the Koyukuk Valley. VFR, southeast interior of the state, down Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, Kodiak VFR, southeast coast, mostly VFR. And for the afternoon, that becomes mostly marginal VFR, maybe holding on to some VFR conditions up over Lynn Canal, maybe Glacier Bay. Good VFR here, South Central Alaska, Prince William Sound, and some marginal VFR possible along the central eastern Alaska Range and also here west of the Alaska Range, which means the Kuskokwim Valley right on up and expands across the Brooks Range and covers all of the Arctic coast and North Slope. IFR here Bering Strait southwest coast and over the Aleutians. And for the afternoon, or I'm sorry, Wednesday morning, we've got IFR, just a patch there in the western Arctic coast. Otherwise, pretty widespread marginal conditions in the forecast right into the central interior. In fact, on down to the central eastern Alaska Range. But south of the mountains looks pretty good until you get into the Gulf here and right up to Cape Yakataga, marginal VFR. But that'll be mostly along or off the coast of the Panhandle. And a band of IFR here with that system out over the Aleutians, lifting north of Atka, it looks like, early on. And then for the afternoon, that whole area dissipates, just a patch here south side of the Alaska Peninsula, VFR northern Bering. Marginal St. Lawrence Island, IFR here, Koyukuk, Kobuk Valley, on up into the central North Slope, but staying VFR, southern Alaska, Tanana Valley, 40-mile country on down across much of the southeast coast. So passes looking like this for tomorrow, mostly or occasionally marginal VFR, looks pretty good for both Anatuvik and Adigan. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, starting out marginal, possibly in the morning, and then better conditions in the afternoon, or definitely VFR, probably by late morning through the afternoon. And for rainy, same trend, maybe some marginal VFR early on, otherwise VFR. Windy, VFR, and Isabel, occasionally marginal, and in the case of Mentasta, VFR date for that pass, but possible marginal VFR southern entrance, definitely VFR in the north side, and Teneda VFR with Portage starting out marginal, becoming VFR, could actually maybe even be VFR the entire day. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels here, 2,000 feet, Bristol Bay. Otherwise, not much of a gradient going on here. We've got the surface just north of the Pribilofs into Kuskokwim Bay, kind of meandering here along the North Gulf Coast, across Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, and then down the eastern border here of the southeast coast. And 2,000 feet, really just barely getting up into the eastern Aleutians. And for icing, isolated moderate possible here, at least a threat of it, extending into the eastern Aleutians back to about Amchitka Island, and icing free here over the interior areas as well as much of the Bering Sea. And then this area mostly hanging off the coast, just a threat at the worst here. So looking pretty good, probably a non-icing day for the Panhandle. And for the jet stream, we've got upper level low in the Gulf of Alaska, not particularly strong, with the main jet here well to the south. And we do have a northwest flow coming down, sailing down from the, or along the west coast here, only at about 50 knots, but kind of keeping the cool conditions in over the interior, and weak high pressure over the northern Bering Sea, and a stronger low here over the central Aleutians. Taking a look at the 9,000-foot wind flow, not really strong on the winds here with the low there in the central Aleutians. Just 15 to 25 knots at the most around that center. Really light here for Bristol Bay, and with a slack weather pattern over the interior, weak high pressure over the eastern interior. Even at 9,000 feet, just 5 to 10 knots from varying directions. And the southeast coast, 5 to 15, mostly out of the southeast. 3,000 feet, light winds continue, 5 to 10 knots over the panhandle. Really light winds, no wind over the interior actually, right up to the Arctic coast, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island. And maybe 20 to 25 knot winds, a little brisker out here over the western Aleutians. And due to that, I threw some turbulence in out there. Light to isolated moderate chop, low about 4,000, but that's from about Kiska Island, shimmy in at 2. Otherwise, no significant turbulence anywhere expected in the state tomorrow, including the southeast coast. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the sea ice conditions and the marine forecasts.
Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service with another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining me today are not just one, but two people, both with the last name Stevens, which is even more fun, but no relation. We have Eric Stevens from Dehne and George Stevens, who is a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Awesome. And today you guys brought a really cool toy, or I should say tool, with you. It's a sandbox, but why are you guys working on a sandbox?
Well, it's part of our senior design project, and we were approached by AKwx to build this for them. They had a proof of concept that they developed about a year ago, I think, and they wanted a more robust version that they could pack onto a plane and take places, and it's a handy learning tool for kids and adults.
So you're a mechanical engineering student. You've built a traveling sandbox for the experimental program to stimulate competitive research, EPSCoR, and Dehne's facilitated this. But why do we need a traveling sandbox?
Well, the prototype was such a big hit that they decided they wanted another one, actually two, that that would be easier to travel with, possibly marketable even.
Okay, so this is a traveling sandbox that's got a lot of bits and pieces and a computer hooked up to it. What is the computer doing with the sand?
The computer actually uses a Kinect sensor to read the topography of the sand or the shape of the sand, and then the computer translates that into information which it projects using a projector onto the sand, showing topographical lines and which is representative of the shape of the sand.
Okay, so this is a live mapping tool?
Yeah. It's interactive. As you're moving your hands through it, it is actively following and changing the lines to fit what you're doing.
That sounds like something I could have in my backyard.
Yep.
It'd be a lot of fun. So you guys had to change the design a little bit to make this more Alaska-fied, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, how'd you do that?
Well, the original was made out of basically lumber and Simpson strong tie type stuff, and we rebuilt it to make it lighter and basically more transportable. We can pack it down to a fairly small size, and it can be loaded onto a plane and flown anywhere in the state.
Which you guys did today. And you have plans to take this in other places of Alaska, right?
Yep, we're actually going to be headed down to Homer with it later today.
Okay, very good. Eric, how does this fit into science learning around Alaska?
Well, you know what? I think it is a tool and it is a toy. And it brings out a smile from an 8-year-old and the smile from a 48-year-old with that inner 8-year-old wanting to get out. The sandbox, it's an interactive learning tool that teaches us how topography in the 3 dimensions is related to, say, a 2-dimensional map. More about that later. Just like George was saying, it's got a Kinect sensor, not just for video games anymore. It can sense out the lay of the land there, feeds that information in the computer identifies that, sends a signal to a projector to send topographic lines to map over that lumpy ground. So you get a 3-dimensional topo map out of it. And my favorite thing about it, this is the thing that stops people at the trade show, they stop at your booth and don't leave, is that you run your hand through that sandbox and it responds in real time. It remaps the topography as you get to be Mr. Tectonic Plate Drifter there. You can make things how you want. Well, what if we made a really high mountain here and a low valley there, and the lines adjust to what you did? It's a learning tool because it shows you that connection between these two-dimensional topo lines, and what's really out in Alaska. And Alaska's a place with all kinds of topography. You know, we're from the Great Plains, where topo maps tend to be just like blank pieces of paper, but Alaska is particularly gifted in this regard, and this tool helps us, I think, learn more about our state, really.
Absolutely. And so this is going to enhance STEM learning, the science, technology, engineering, and math, in many different locations around Alaska. Then this would be something that kids and teachers can get their hands on.
It sure is. And I mentioned the it's like fly paper at a booth that, or at the Science Potpourri when we had Greg's original version of this sandbox, and that one was made out of scraps of wood, and it was a prototype. But even that one, before it had some of the refinements that George and crew have made for this newer, upscaled, maybe a 2.0 version of the sandbox, even that one was so attractive to people. It just demonstrated that this has potential to be a learning tool, an outreach tool, an education tool that now is portable and can go places in Alaska. Of course, there's only one sandbox, can't be everywhere at once, but hopefully it gets out there, gets the word out about EPSCoR and what science is being done here for Alaskans.
All right, that sounds really interesting, and I can't wait to get my hands in the sand and try this out for myself. We're going to demonstrate this here in our next segment of Alaska Weather Facts, but before we go, we want to remind you that EPSCoR, which is a new acronym for me now, but I'm going to remember this because you can follow them on Facebook and Twitter, and I invite you to do that. Alaska EPSCoR is also something that facilitates science learning at the University of Alaska around the state, and that stands for Experimental Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. So check that out, and make sure you tune in tomorrow because we're going to have the next version where we actually get our hands in the sand and check out how this works and demonstrates that topography. So for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you again next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back to today's Sea Ice Analysis. Nothing south of St. Lawrence Island here except off to the southwest, but an open area also right up along the east side there, almost to the Bering Strait, and pretty well iced in north of the strait there on up along the Arctic coast. What not showing here, there are some areas of much thinner ice on the western Arctic coast there in small areas, also Norton Sound opening up. Coastal water forecast, southern southeast coast there, outer coastline, south to southeast 15, southeast 20 on the north coast, seas near 10 feet, south 10, Lynn Canal, and southeast 10 in Stevens Passage, southeast 15, Clarence Strait. And then that picks up to 20 knots, a little bit of an increase there on Monday. Light south to southeast winds for the central northern inside waters, small craft advisories all along the coast now, as winds coming up 25 knots. And out of the southeast with 11-foot seas on the south coast, east-southeast seas 8 to 11 feet in the north coast. Prince William Sound, light easterlies tomorrow, slight seas, and northeast 20 for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Light east-northeast winds here for the western North Gulf Coast, Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, north winds at 10 for Cook Inlet. And the outlook for Monday, no change here for Cook Inlet, light northerlies at 10 knots, northeast 10, Kamishak Bay, 15-knot winds out of the northeast for the Barren Islands here and the western North Gulf Coast, east 20 there near Middleton Island and Prince William Sound, continued light wind conditions, generally north at 10 or so. And for Shelikof Strait, same thing, north winds 10 knots, but seas 3 feet there, and northeast 15 east side of Kodiak, all the way down to Cape Sarachef, pretty uniform wind pattern with, except for the seas, coming up to 14 feet here, south side of the Alaska Peninsula, light northerlies from the north side of the Alaska Peninsula right into Bristol Bay. Outlook for Monday, those turn east, but stay light for Bristol Bay at about 10 knots, 1-foot seas. Northeast 20 here for the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, and the Pacific side actually from Cape Sarachef right up to Sitkinak. East 20 knots, east 10 knots for much of Kodiak Island. And now over the western Aleutians, small craft advisories there with a little bit tighter gradient west of Amchitka. 25-knot winds, not even that, not too bad. And northwest 15, turn south to southwest 15 to 20 for Adak and Atka. And basically easterlies for the eastern Aleutians, light on the light side at 15 knots. And for Monday, that picks up somewhat. It's still kind of a variable wind direction, but trying to go north-northwest here, 10 to 20 knots for the eastern Aleutians, 15 to 30 knot winds for the central Aleutians, and then solid 30 knot winds out west of Adak to Shemya and Attu. And for the Bering Strait, south of the Bering Strait in the St. Lawrence Island zone. North winds 20 knots, northeast 15 here, north of Nunivak Island, north 15 south side, and east 15 for the Pribilofs, and 20 knot winds for St. Matthew Island. And then an increase in those winds on Monday. Small craft advisories up to 30 knots there for the Pribilofs, 10-foot seas, 25 knots, northern Bering Sea right up to St. Lawrence Island, all north 25. And up along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, east. Coming down a little bit from what you had today, but staying brisk there with brisk wind advisories for 25 knot winds, east 20 on the central coast, northeast 20 on the west side, northwesterlies there along the northwest coast, Chukchi Sea and toward Kotzebue Sound, probably turning westerly in through here though. And then for Monday, northwest 25, brisk wind advisories here for the Chukchi Sea right up to Cape Beaufort. And then you drop back down to 15 knots from the north-northeast, and still easterly winds 20 to 30 knots, kind of an average of tomorrow's wind. Anyway, strongest over toward demarcation point. And looking at tonight's forecast again, we have winter weather advisories remaining out until midnight tonight for the greater Tanana and the Tanana area there, Galena, up into the Koyukuk Valley areas, maybe over to the Kobuk. And anyway, several more inches of snow for totals of something like maybe up to 5 inches. And that really tapering off as you head south along that trough there, just some scattered snow shower conditions. Not much change on the eastern Arctic coast except for the winds gradually diminishing. Any snowfall very light and insignificant. Some rain with a weak low out over the central Aleutians. And generally cloudy, maybe some patchy fog for the Panhandle. Tomorrow, kind of a showery condition here developing in the interior here with mostly cloudy skies in the afternoon, maybe a little more sun in the early morning hours. Otherwise, flurries on the Arctic coast with chance of showers, mostly cloudy for the Panhandle. Weak system to your southwest here moves northeast and brings rain back into the southern coast Monday afternoon. Otherwise, partly mostly sunny northern Panhandle, southern Alaska. Still some snow shower activity up over the northwest coast.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.